103 people reported killed in Iran in blast near General's tomb. The explosions took place at a commemoration for Qasem Soleimani, the top commander killed by a U.S. drone strike 4 years ago. What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name's Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. The reason I'm covering this story is because I'm very interested in U.S. foreign policy. I've been living abroad for the past few years, so U.S. foreign policy is almost like my domestic policy. It matters to me in my life because the U.S. seems to have its tentacles all across the planet and seems to inflict harm on other people regardless of their nationality, regardless of international law. I remember when Qasem Soleimani was killed, I was living in Tunisia at the time, and it really broke my heart to see that America could so willingly take the life of a man who was just doing the service of his country, and we just think that's okay. Everybody called him a terrorist in the media. Everybody was deriding his name, but he was acting on the best interests of his country. Now, imagine if Iran sent a drone to kill Lloyd Austin, our, top military guy. That would not be okay. And everybody would have gone gung-ho. Well, how do you think the Iranian people feel? I'm going to jump into this story and give my reaction to it. This is coming from the New York Times. This is a photograph released by Iranian state media showing emergency personnel at the blast site in Kerman, Iran. The explosion struck the road toward the cemetery, officials said. Now, I'm not blaming the U.S. for this. I have not read this story ahead of time, so I don't know who they are pointing the finger at as the perpetrators for this, but either way, it's not cool for innocent people to be slaughtered in such a manner. This was written by Vivian Yi and Farnaz Fasihi, published on January 3rd, 2024. A pair of explosions on Wednesday at a commemoration for Iran's former top military general Qasem Soleimani killed at least 103 people and wounded another 171, according to Iranian officials. The blast sowed fear and grief in Iran and heightened tensions in the broader region even further, a day after an explosion killed several Hamas officials in a suburb of Beirut, Lebanon. Iranian officials told state media that a pair of bombs placed in bags along the road toward the cemetery in Kerman, Iran, had exploded as a procession of people was on its way there to commemorate the 4-year anniversary of General Soleimani's assassination by the United States. The officials said the bags appeared to have been detonated via remote control, leaving bodies and pieces on the ground. So, I know a lot of times I've said in my other videos that the U.S. is the most dangerous place in the world because we allow so many people to have guns. I still stand by that, and I hate when these stories come out. People say, well, thank God I live in America, because if I was in Iran, I could be blown up anytime and stuff like that. The thing is, in America, we have terrorist attacks like this that happen every so often, but every day in the U.S. there is close to a terrorist attack because we have multiple shootings across the country. But people think that's okay. That's the price we pay for the freedom to have guns so that our children can be slaughtered in schools and that sort of stuff. I'm not trying to change the subject. I'm just putting this all in perspective. Iran, by and large, it's a much safer country for most people to live in than the U.S., where at any moment you can get clapped up at any place at any time. Going to jump back into the story. Given the sheer scale of the blast, which state media described as a terrorist attack, the death toll was likely to rise. Videos and photos of the explosion's aftermath on state media showed widespread carnage and chaos, with sirens blaring and the injured, among them children, my God, collapsing to the ground. Bloodied, several of the wounded screamed, "God help us, everyone is killed." Just before the explosions, videos showed a dense crowd of thousands walking along a road lined with food and drink stalls and flags as a prayer from the Quran played from speakers. Then a huge blast rocked the area, the air filled with screams and people scattered in all directions, videos showed. This is horrific as they're describing it here. This is absolutely horrible. We should be able to solve our disputes with people with words, not with bombs, guns, bullets, and that sort of stuff. Only through defensive measures should these sort of tactics ever be used, especially, in fact, never against civilians, only against military targets. I have to make this absolutely clear so nobody thinks that I am a sympathizer for people who do this sort of evil in the world. It's going to continue here. Unfortunately, many of the injured people are in critical condition, said Babak Yaktaparast, the spokesman for the country's emergency relief operations. He said all medical facilities in the province of Kerman were on standby to treat patients and emergency emergency airplanes were being deployed for medical evacuations to hospitals in Tehran. I hope the people who are injured are fully healed and that sort of stuff. This is Qasem Soleimani right here for anybody who doesn't remember his face and stuff like that. And I have no particular love for the Iranian regime because, as we know, in Iran, and I need to cover this story because it's very important, the Iranians have a subsect of black people that live in their country in the south of the nation. They are descendants of slaves that were brought to Iran, and they live in horrible, horrible conditions. I highly suggest people go follow on Twitter, or now called X, this page dedicated to black Iranians. It's in English. It's very dope, and it details their lives and their struggles. So I have no particular love for the Iranian regime because any regime that's anti-black or a society that is anti-black will always be my enemy. But I do want to point out that Qasem Soleimani's assassination goes to show how white supremacy works in the world. A lot of Arabs, a lot of people who are from the Middle East consider themselves white. Hell, when they move to the U.S., they are considered white on census documents, on IDs and that sort of stuff. But how does the U.S. treat them? They treat them no better than they do the Asians, how we drop nuclear bombs on Japan's innocent civilians, how we drop napalm all over Vietnam, how we just, carpet bombed Cambodia, how we dropped drone strikes all over Black Africa, how the U.S., toppled democratically elected leaders in Latin America, the Arabs, the Persians, all the people in the Middle East. Y'all are not white. Y'all are not white. The white supremacists don't see y'all that way. And trust me, that's not how they treat y'all, because they had no problem knocking over your guy, your top general. Let's go here. Mourners in Tehran in 2020 after the death of Major General Qasem Soleimani. Let's go back to the text. The head of Iran's judiciary, Gholam Hossein Mohseni Eji, said all the country's intelligence, security, and military organs were being enlisted to determine who was behind the explosions. Iran's Interior Minister Ahmed Vahidi told state television that most of the casualties were from the second explosion, which followed minutes after the first, as crowds had gathered to help the injured. He said the situation in the city of Kerman was now under the control of security and military. We will, God willing, inshallah, deliver a big slap to those responsible for this terrorist attack, said Mr. Vahidi. They are mistaken to think our resolve will be broken by such cowardly attacks. The explosions came 4 years after an American drone strike assassinated General Soleimani, the longtime commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps powerful Quds Force, at Baghdad airport. So here's where the explosion happened in Iran. I know a lot of people turn into my channel and they don't know basic geography. Here is Iran, right here. You can see it on the screen. Large country in the Middle East, sort of the bridge between what we consider the Middle East and Asia. Has many thousands of years of history. Very historic, mountainous place with, I believe, a population of about 60 million people. I could be wrong, but I think that's the general number. Going on, continuing here. General Soleimani had been hailed in Iran and in parts of the wider region as a hero for building and arming a Tehran-led network of regional proxy militias that countered the United States and Israel across the Middle East, and he continues to enjoy near mythic status among pro-government Iranians. His funeral in 2020 drew more than 1 million mourners, according to official estimates. Every year on the anniversary of his assassination, some Iranians hold processions and ceremonies in his honor. By cultivating close personal ties with the leaders of partners across the region, the Arabic-speaking General Soleimani became the face of Iran's Shiite axis of influence, which reshaped Middle East geopolitics for years to come. The Syrian and Iraqi militias he helped establish also played a critical role in defeating the Islamic State, the extremist group that overran large swaths of Syria and Iraq in the mid-20s. So he was fighting ISIS, which is generally a good thing. But also another good thing was fighting the dominating force of the American military that came into Iraq, killed their innocent civilians, toppled their leader, and that sort of stuff. I mean, think about this. People like to think, oh, the Iranians are naturally bad, right? And once again, I am not in defense of the Iranian regime. But what would America do if Russia invaded Mexico, toppled their leader, killed their civilians, and was setting up, their bases in Mexico? Do you think the U.S. would just be okay with that? No, we'd be funding all sorts of, insurgent groups against the Russian-led government of Mexico now. You don't think Iran would do the same thing? So it's not black and white in the sense of good or or bad, but it's just about interest and security. Iran wants to protect their border, protect their people. They have ISIS right at the next door. The U.S. caused mad instability in their neighbor, Iraq, right here. So, of course, they're going to go in there and try to influence them in their direction. Plus, Iraq, for a long time, was led by a Sunni minority that was persecuting the Shiite majority, which is Iraq. And Iran is a mostly Shia nation, and they are protectors of the Shia all across the world. So they're going to go into Iraq to try to protect their interest and also spread their influence. It's just geopolitics, basic geopolitics. Going to continue here. So, the regional allies, General Soleimani, armed and funded, also included Hamas, the military and political group that controls Gaza, as well as Hezbollah, the armed political party that dominates much of Lebanon. Hezbollah has been clashing with Israeli forces on Lebanon's southern border, even as Hamas battles Israel in Gaza. The identities of those who died in Iran on Wednesday were not yet known. Some Iranians on social media were blaming the government and local security officials for failing to secure such a high-profile event. During the funeral ceremony for General Soleimani in 2020, a stampede along the same road as Wednesday's explosion killed 60 people. And that's the end of the story. Once again, this is horrific. I hate to hear stories like this. I was hoping 2024 was going to be peaceful, but it seems like 2023's epic wars and conflicts and needless deaths across the planet will continue to happen, and I hope that does not continue. Prayers for all the people that lost their lives. Peace in Iran, peace in the Middle East is what we want. And they didn't point any fingers at who could have possibly been behind this. We could easily say the Americans, the Israelis, I don't know. Somebody. It could have been anybody. Who knows? Who knows who it was? The point is that this is all pointless. This is all very pointless, and we need to be unified as people against these sorts of evil people who would do terrorist attacks like this. Prayers for Iran. My name's Simon Hill. Peace.